Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So, welcome to getting to the summary part of solving one variable equations, or inequalities, I'm sorry. I'd like to kind of do a quick little summary of the process that we use when solving one variable inequalities, and then as well as kind of highlight some tips and tricks, as well as go over some common mistakes that I see with my, my students, as well as myself sometimes when I was learning solving and graphing one variable inequalities. So basically, when we're solving one variable inequalities, we're going to treat it just like an equation. And a lot of times I get my tips and tricks is even like replacing the inequality symbol with an equation, because basically the process, the inverse operations and reverse order operations are going to be the same for an inequality as they are for an equation. So the exact same processes of exactly even the properties of equality, we are going to apply them to an inequality. Now there is one difference. When we are solving, and anytime we have to multiply or divide by a negative value, we need to make sure we flip the inequality symbol. So that is one of the big differences that is between them, which I did not write. Yes, I did write that as a common mistake. All right, so then once we go ahead and solve, flip the sign if we need to, then we usually have a statement, x is less than or equal to 7, or x is greater than 3, and we have some value. Well, since we have more than one solution, a lot of times we like to graph the solution. So we take our solution on a number line, and then we preferably use test points, and we shade towards where all the solutions are, or shade all of the solutions on that number line. So let's go and kind of hit on some tips and tricks. First thing, as I mentioned, a lot of times it's helpful to replace the inequality symbol with an equation. That kind of triggers your brain again to start solving your inequality just like an equation. Just make sure if you divide by or multiply by a negative number that you flip the sign when you re-enter back in the inequality symbol at the solution. The next thing is a lot of times circle the variable. Students have trouble identifying the inverse operations unless they have circled the variable, and sometimes even rewrite the problem. For instance, a lot of times if I have like, let's see here, negative 3x plus 2. A lot of students will think that I am subtracting the 3. No, I'm multiplying by a negative 3. So if I rewrite this as 2 minus 3x, well, first of all, actually, you can see that I'm adding the 2, and then I'm multiplying by a negative 3. So a lot of times rewriting it in different formats will allow you to identify those identify the operations easier. And that's also helpful when you just circle the variable. Then you say, all right, what is happening to my variable that I need to undo? The next thing is using test points. So when we're graphing, so we have a graph, right? And let's say, well, here's my point. And I want to determine, do I shade to the left or shade to the right? Well, let's say this is 0, and that's 1, that's 2, that's negative 3, okay? Or negative 1, negative 2. And if I'm going to use my test points, and I have an inequality that x is less than 0, what I need to do is plug in these points in for x. So say negative 1 is less than 0. Is that true or false? That's true. Is 0 less than 0? No, that's false. So since it's false, I'm going to leave that open. Since that's true, I shade towards the left, all right? So use test points. And another way to say it, another way to do it is just to say your inequality out loud. X is less than 0. What are all the numbers that are less than 0? Well, that has to be all of your negative numbers. So I'm going to shade to my left. Now let's kind of hit on some common mistakes. One, forgetting when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you don't flip your sign. Using the wrong inverse operations. Again, looking at this and saying, oh, this is minus 2. No, 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 you're adding a 2 to this, all right? So you need to undo, make sure you undo the correct operation. And then also not following the reverse order of operations. Some students might want to undo multiplication by negative 3 before undoing adding 2. Remember, we always undo addition and subtraction first, then undo multiplication and division. Let's see. And lastly, graphing in the wrong direction. So basically, when we're graphing, we just want to make sure that obviously we use our test points or we say out loud. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is just a quick little summary of graphing and solving one variable inequalities. Thanks.